Why are you muting yourself?
I know. I was muting my other me.
Oh.
Hi,
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Cris has got a song for you
How's
all.
you? It's been a while since I've gone live on here, but in honor of Joey's DNA reveal today, I feel like we're like having one of those, those baby parties where like the cake color reveals the sex, only like we know. So like now it's like the DNA reveal. We'll cut the cake and find out. But anyway,
Yes.
in honor of that, we thought we would kick it off because Joey and I were talking today and we discovered that Lady Gaga actually. So the chicken and the egg. No, I'm doing it the whole way. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And Joey just yells, "Dinosaur!"
Dinosaur!
Yes. And then, sorry if you have your phones in, guys.
And not sorry.
Then, how do we get to the other thing? Oh, and then I was like, where did the dinosaur come from? And she was like,
amoeba.
And then I was like, oh yeah? Where did the amoeba come from?
Judas. I don't know, Judas. And
then we were like, oh yeah, well, what about that? And it was like Lady Gaga. And we're like, oh my God, that's why we were born this way. Which led to...
We're not high.
How'd it go again? How'd it go again? It's like, I'm on the right track. God dang it. Oh no! What was I just singing? I was singing it repeatedly too, guys.
You were singing about my DNA. There
ain't no other way. Baby, this is Joey's DNA. But like, I lost it. It was better in a rhythm. Damn it. Damn it. But basically, we started making an entire song.
Today we're gonna show DNA.
On the right track, baby. This is Joey today. Yeah, it's like, yeah, basically. And so I've been singing that for the last 30 minutes, roughly, I guess.
We've been crying. It's been that funny.
Yeah. Going to get my water, singing to my cat about Joey's DNA, like, you know. Yes, all things come back to Lady Gaga eventually. Exactly, Tracy.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Gosh. Oh my gosh. All right. So we're kicking that off. Obviously, this is a continuation because, well, first of all, yay, I'm back on my channel, guys. That's like awesome. It's been forever. Yeah, and if you don't know why, then I suggest you check out the other live that I did last Friday on Joey's channel, because that will explain where I've been and why I have not been around a whole lot, but you've seen me like periodically. If you were on my Patreon or part of What the Flux podcast, you know what's up. Otherwise, go check out that live. Continuing on from that, at the end of that live, we started to talk about Ancestry and DNA. I don't remember exactly how we got there, but the point is that we're here now. And so Joey has done testing with, was it Ancestry.com or 23andMe?
It was myheritage.com. And it was a gift. I will say that somebody gifted me a DNA test. It wasn't that I did it. It was somebody kindly gifted it to me. I won't say who it is in case she doesn't want me to say who it is. You know. But she kindly gifted it to me, and just to find it out, just out of interest more than anything. So yeah.
So we're gonna talk about that, and then I love to talk about ancestry, like it's my thing. So we thought, well, let's make a whole live of it and have us together and just talk about this topic in general, because there's a lot of thoughts that come up around it. I have also had my ancestry one done. I don't have it pulled up, but I can roughly quote to you basically what happened.
Also, before we get into it, I should probably say that I didn't think about that until just this second. We're actually at a crossroads with like the solar eclipse and the new moon. So the fact that we're looking at DNA and ancestry in that place of darkness is really interesting, because it's like, where did we come from?
Where did we go? Where did we come from? Joe. Sorry. Everything is a song today, guys. Be prepared.
It's going to be insanity today. I have a feeling. We've been on with Molly, so we're like, and then between then and now, I've eaten food and drank coffee, so we're just extra hyper now.
I have 2 water bottles for this. That's how much talking I expect. All right.
I mean,
yeah. See, we're prepared. Let's
we're
do
prepared.
this.
Hashtag Earth Signs.
Oh my goodness. So, yeah. So that is actually a really good point. Looking into your roots. Cancer itself is a very like homebody oriented sign. They're all about family. They're all about
which is what moon we're in, if anyone's confused.
Yes. So not only is it a Cancer sign, it's a Cancer moon, and then there was a solar eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
So and then there's going to be a lunar eclipse on the 27th, I believe it is. Yep. And usually when there's an eclipse, it makes a gateway. For those of you on the podcast or Patreon, you've heard me talk about this already, and you're probably sick of it. But it makes a gateway. It makes a liminal space. It makes a threshold, a crossroads, if you will. Mm-hmm. And from that, you can see all points. That's the advantage of it. Mm. So it's really interesting, actually, that with all of that combined, we're kind of taking that torch and holding it up to all the roads that lead to us. We are the crossroad. Mm-hmm. So with that, Joy, why don't you tell them a little bit about like your road with it? Because I know there's backstory to this.
Mm-hmm. There is backstory with it. Okay. So initially I wasn't sure of my ancestry or DNA. Now I am estranged from most of my immediate family. So finding the genealogy through them is not something that is accessible to me at all in that fashion. And to be honest with you, I had a feeling that the Morrigan didn't want me to look at my DNA to begin with, because as part of my path, I came up against you're so English, how dare you work with an Irish goddess? And if that confrontation from certain people made me look at all the different roots of whether or not I felt that in my heart that mattered to me. So before I knew where I came from and what my ancestry is, I had an inkling before the DNA test, which I'll touch on before we get to that point. But I was at the point where I was like, I don't feel that it matters hugely to me in terms of this DNA test. It was interesting to me, but it wasn't going to be like a pivotal life-altering moment. Like if my DNA chart had come back and had been like 0% Irish, it wouldn't have stopped my relationship with the Morrigan, and it wouldn't have made me feel any less connected to her. I didn't need it as a authenticity tablet or whatever you want to call it of I have the right to work with this goddess, because that's not how I feel about ancestry. We're all intermingled anyway. There's energetic intermingling in the spiritual ecosystem. There's past lives. There's all this really, we'll get into it more throughout this podcast undoubtedly, because we're FLUX like that. But there was like, for me, I kind of like I hadn't gone down the road of looking, because I felt it was more important to defend people's right to work with gods and goddesses in a fluxy way, in an interconnected way. I reject the idea that because basically down that road is racism. Like you can't work with the goddess if you're not Irish. So anybody who's not like white can come across that and it becomes a racist argument. I'm like, no, that's not okay with me. And I've seen it used that way in terms of like gender orientation and stuff as well. And I was just like, I'm not interested in any of this hate thought line, this speech line, because it's to me, it's not an issue to me. It's just people trying to claim a goddess and trying to say you're not allowed to work with her, because no interest in it. So for that reason, like initially I was apprehensive about DNA testing. But you know, I came further down the line, and I think I have stated where I feel about it pretty strongly, about that, you know, it's not about whether or not you're Irish.
Did you always kind of feel that way, or was there a period of time where like you kind of tried Irish stuff to conform with it? Yeah.
No, I mean
with gods in general or goddesses in general, I guess, because I know, you know, like when a lot of people start out, they kind of look at what the format is already and try to fit within that.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that like a lot of my immediate heritage was not English anyway, so I covered that. I'm also a historian, so I know that the Celts traveled, intermingled. They were not, stuck in Ireland and they never left. It's not that big a water gap, guys. And you've got like historical sites in the Isle of Skye, in Scotland, in Wales. There's a ton of it in Wales, like Irish-based carvings and Ogham things. There's more Ogham surviving replicas in Wales than anywhere else, including Ireland. So, they intermingled, they connected, they traveled, they traded, they fought. So to me, it's never been like, and when people have come to me like stupid little, and I've been called a stupid little English girl, which the DNA tests are going to be fairly hilarious in the light of that. And had people come at me in that kind of, I guess it's racism, but not quite racism, because it's like national xenophobia. I suppose it's xenophobia more than anything. And I was never okay with that. Like, I was like, I never doubted that the Morrigan came to me, and I've never doubted that it's her and she, if I'm worthy in her eyes, people's jibber jabber don't make much difference to that, to be honest. That's how I always felt about it. But as I said, somebody else who knows all of this and has seen all of this wanted to gift it to me for some time, and then she mentioned it more recently, and I said, well, I was like, because they're fairly expensive, the DNA tests, and I was like, it's not necessary. And she was like, I've wanted to do this for a really long time, please let me. And I was like, okay, if you really want to do it, then I will graciously accept. I'm very, very grateful to her for gifting it to me. And I said to her, like, once it comes, the minute it comes, her and I will face chat and you'll find out with me. So it was kind of like an experience for both of us in that sense as well. So she got a little something back from it. And it came through and it was fairly interesting. So that's where we're at with it.
Yeah. Well, and there's, I think, how do you want to attack this, Joey? Do you want to do that first and then go into all the roots, or should we venture off in the roots? I think
if we do this first and then venture into the roots, that probably makes more sense.
All right.
So
shall I drum roll?
Yes.
You want me to drum roll?
You're probably not gonna be able to do this properly. Oh, okay. But there's the map. So here's the DNA website.
Let me make sure you get clicked up the whole time.
Right.
There we go. All right.
So I'm going to hold it so you can see it's an actual DNA test. It's not me making it up. I am 50% Irish, Scottish, and Welsh. 20.2% East European, 16.1% Scandinavian, and 13% English. So I actually, just before I found out about this, my sister actually told me that she'd found out that my grandmother's father was Irish, and he'd come over from Ireland, and all of his family going back were Irish. On the other side, it's Welsh. So the 50.6% Irish, Scottish, and Welsh. Yeah. And the bit that made me laugh was 13.1% English. I'm less English than I am Scandinavian. By 3%, and I'm not sure exactly where the East European is. They've got it circled anywhere.
Will they let you click it so that it brings it up in more detail?
Not really. I'm waiting to see if they're gonna give me any more depth, like, as time goes on, because apparently that is a thing. They have the map circled, and it's circled between, it's the whole of Eastern Europe, so it could be anywhere from like Latvia, Lithuania to Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, Czech. It could be any of these things. It could be Serbia. It's almost nearly in Greece and the top of Turkey as well. So Eastern European could be any of that, and I'm not sure about the more depth than that until if they get back in contact with me and say they've narrowed it down even further, which they may or may not do. I'm not sure about it, but it was really funny to me that I am like, people come at me and you're like, you're English, you're not allowed. You're English, you're not allowed. And I'm like, well, actually, that's the smallest part of my DNA right there.
Interesting. So how'd you feel when you saw it? Like, what was the initial reaction?
I mean, I laughed at it. I thought it was funny because, like, all the people that have come for me for being English and how dare I deal with Irish gods and stuff.
Right.
But I knew that when I got it, it would be interesting to me, but it still wasn't
Mhm.
going to be pivotal to me. Because even if it had come back and it had been like no Irish, it wouldn't have made that much of a difference to me. But it was really interesting when it came back and it was like 50%. And I'm like, okay, it's interesting.
That's a significant amount. Yeah.
It's also a really, really white girl DNA. because like I was sure we were gonna have a little bit.
I think my initial reaction when you told me, you like read it down and I was like, so you're white.
Like super, yeah. I was like, that is not is not cross-cultural. I was like, wow, like yeah. Which I was kind of surprised about. I was thinking there might be other roots from other places, but there's not in.
Well, even within that, there's a blend, too. I mean, we could break it down because the thing is too is that like every blood type kind of like every ethnicity, we'll say, kind of gets a stereotype with it that you have to look that way specifically, and that's what it means. You know, that's what they look like, and that's how much you have in you. This happens a lot in the native world, especially, for instance, that I grew up with. So if you don't look native, your blood quantum must be shit. Not necessarily always the truth, guys. Like, you can have 2 kids from the same parents, and those kids will pull differently with their DNA in terms of percentage. From each parent. So it differs. So it's not like, yeah, what you see isn't always what you get, basically.
Yeah.
But it does bring up all kinds of questions when it comes to ancestry stuff. I honestly like that all of these tests are able to be taken now. Oh yeah, we're definitely all mutts to some degree. Like, if anybody has taken my Ancestral Work 101 course, you know just how much we've blended because I go into details in there and facts and statistics and tell you exactly how much we would have had to be, you know, our own lines to have not blended. It's not a thing. But this brings up all kinds of interesting questions. I do like that we're able to do these tests because it does kind of show people who think, oh, I'm 100% this. Well, actually, it's a lot more complicated than that. And everybody has like 1,000 stories, you know, to get to their story. And so I think it's, on one hand, it's made us a lot more mindful of all of that and how blended we really are. Which I think is good. Instead of fighting about all that shit. You know, Hatfields and McCoy's bullshit. But it also brings up what is ancestry? What is bloodline? Who are you really allowed, quote unquote, to work with? And not only that, who are you allowed to work with in terms of this life? Because that also brings up past lives. It also brings up you know, spirit guides and things that work with you, all kinds of other things. And the fact that, like, you know, if a deity comes to you and you don't necessarily work with the stuff, but it's very clearly them, what do you do with that? You know? So it brings up all kinds of questions with this. So let's see, which one should we attack first? Well, I guess first of all, before we go into this, I should also say I am predominantly Great Britain.
Yeah. She's probably more English than me.
I am actually. My dominant stuff is Anglo-Saxon. I do have, I think it's 7% Scandinavian. I am 15% Irish, which was shocking. Because I grew up in a town that was predominantly Scotch-Irish. And everybody was like, oh yeah, we're all Scotch-Irish. And I was like, I don't think that we are, though, because when I look up last names, that is not what I find.
Mm-hmm.
I find a lot of Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Norman, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially I'm Plymouth Rock, basically, because I also have 3 tribes at least that I know of via my mother and father combined.
Mm-hmm.
That are along the East Coast. So I'm basically Plymouth Rock before we go on, essentially. So there you go. But anyway, so where should we
where the
start?
Scandinavian comes from, because I'd be interested to know which part of Scandinavia actually.
I think also, though, the Scandinavian, we could say, came down with the different tribes, like the Angles and the Utes and the Saxons and stuff.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of invasion in England.
There's a theory, that kind of like the smaller it gets, the further back it probably was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, like, that's a lenient thing because DNA is weird. But I always just kind of assumed it was like their pillaging line, if you will. So, yeah. I guess you could say, in a way, I just come from a lot of like medial societies in that way. But then again, what isn't a medial society? So,
where are we starting?
Where to start, guys? We could start with... Let's start with the God thing, because we did talk about, like, with the goddess stuff, how a lot of people, for you, that was a stressor, like, who you can work with, and to find this out. So that's kind of like a core point. So let's hit on that first.
Sure.
Oh, bye, Everin. Love you too.
Lots of love. Have fun.
Ooh. Okay. There. You froze up for a second. There we go. Hey. Are you there? Are you listening? Joey.
I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm waiting for
you. I'll put it to you.
Oh, you gotta throw me under the bus. All right, okay.
Well, no, I'm saying because this was an important thing with you with goddesses.
It was, and I mean, I've had.
How did you kind of reconcile that in your head? I guess.
What before about knowing the DNA? Before we knew the DNA.
And going on with people saying that stuff to you, where did you find
peace?
The peace or the solace to kind of make your own definition from that?
So the first thing that I think is probably the most important point, at least to me, and what I tell other people, is nobody can tell you that your experience is wrong. And the only way that you wouldn't believe in your own experience is if you yourself doubt your experience. Now, with it being spirituality and it being esoteric and it being up in the ether a lot of the time, sometimes we all question whether we're nuts and we're just hearing voices or whatever. I don't
think I question anymore.
Maybe not now, but like
we started with singing Lady Gaga about DNA.
I mean,
I don't question.
We're cray at this point. full on cray. We will get to past lives, I promise. But the first thing that I think is most important is realizing that no one can take your experiences with deity from you. And if a deity speaks to you and you are certain in it, there's a certainty that comes with that work. It comes with the messages you receive. It can come with synchronicities. It can come with a whole host of experiences, dreams, meditations, just honest connections. It can come with like seeing particular animals everywhere and you just feel that connection. And the way that I think is best to describe the feeling when you know you're connected to deity is kind of the same feeling you get when you're in awe of something in nature. So say that you're watching a sunset or a sunrise, or you're watching a thunderstorm, whatever it is that really gets to your soul and makes you go, God, this is just so magnificent and huge and so connective and so powerful. You should get that same kind of vibe with the deity that you work with. Like, yes,
Expansive.
this is it. This is my thing. This is where I belong. I feel like I've come home a little bit. This makes sense. This adds up, and all the roots come together.
I feel like I've come home. That's like a key word there, I think, really. Feeling of it,
And no one can tell you haven't had that feeling. Like, people will try, but if you've had that feeling, you've had that kind of epiphany, if you like, and it continues. And the Morrigan is an interesting example because she does come in very, very strong, and then she backs off, and then she comes in very, very strong, and then she backs off, and people freak out about it. I don't freak out about it because I'm exactly the same. I have my hermit moments too, so I'm like, that makes sense, because I need to be alone sometimes, so why wouldn't she, kind of vibe. But for me, I never doubted my relationship with the Morrigan, because she had always been there. She spoke. It was her will. And I was like, I didn't feel that people coming at me could tell me that my experiences were fake just because I wasn't Irish in their eyes. And they had no clue as to my genetics. I didn't know fully until I'd seen this DNA test. And to me, it didn't really matter anyway. And it still doesn't. It's interesting that 50% of me might be Irish, and it's fascinating. Interesting. But it doesn't define who I am, and it doesn't take away or define, or it doesn't make my experiences more credible just because this DNA exists. So that's the first thing.
Yeah. There's definitely an element of trusting in the signs that you get, trusting in the feelings, trusting in the visions. There's a lot of, and it happens in general in the community, but also online, because everybody's kind of, there's a show me element to being online, right? Like with Facebook and everybody's status updates and pictures and everything. And so everybody kind of oversees everybody else's stuff to an extent, or thinks they do, because it's there's a comparison thing going on. And I mean, to an extent, that's just humanity. Like, we do that to some degree. But I think within that, what happens sometimes is it turns into people will be so like, this thing is so and not even always out of animosity, but sometimes just because it's something that's so sacred to them,
they don't want to see it defiled.
They don't, and they don't know how to see it kind of outside of themselves, outside of that relationship. You know what I'm saying? That they have between that deity and them. And I think that there's a difference. You have a friend, and that friend is slightly different, both friends, because you two are different people. And so you're going to see different aspects of that flower of life, if you will. So as much as they can be the same, there is variance. And I think that we often forget that when we work with deity in a community kind of way. And look at each other in that way in comparison. It's good to learn from people, but also, like, what you feel with your people is what you feel. And as you said, when you confirm it and truly that's what you feel, there's really you get to a point where, like, you just can't deny it. It is what it is.
There's also a point where
the journey there can be long.
You get to the point as well that you don't feel the need to tell other people whether they do or do not work with that deity, because this is how I feel when people are like, this person doesn't work with the Morrigan. No, come on, they don't know anything, they're not being respectful. And my response to that now is, I have no way of knowing whether they do or they don't, and it's not really my business. That's up to the Morrigan. Now, if they're lying about it, if they're making it up for whatever reason, the only person they're kind of screwing over is themselves, because they are denying themselves a true connection probably somewhere else but they just want it to be the Moragan.
Well,
but they would have a deeper reaction
and
somewhere
sometimes
else.
that's just the path they have to walk. Sometimes they have to go to another one to get to that one, and that's just kind of the process that it's going to take. And it really has nothing to do with you as the other devotee to, you know, said goddess or god. It doesn't have to do with you directly. Your relationship is your relationship.
And that's it.
I think the only time that might vary a little is if it's within coven work, because then you are doing spell work at the same time together. There does need to be kind of a very focused idea of what you're doing and where you're coming from. With a lot of covens, at least, not all of them, but a lot of them. But it's a little different when you're an individual practitioner. So there's an aspect of that. Now, something else that we talked about that we touched on in the other, I believe, or it might have been our podcast, talking about Odin and past lives and such.
That's podcast.
Yeah. So another element of this too is that sometimes they can call to you and they're not your blood in this life. But
I do have something written down here which I just wanted to differentiate, if it's okay, before we just because
go for it.
I think it's worth pointing out that DNA in terms of heritage does not define all your past lives, and this is how I see it. So DNA is the physical, is the earth element, is the body that you're currently wearing has that DNA, right? So the ancestry of the physical incarnation that you're in is tied to this, and this. Your soul is transcendent. Your soul doesn't have to always be in a white girl body like mine is right now. It doesn't have
whatever other body you have.
Or what? I'm just talking about mine. But or whatever body you're in. And to be honest with you, it would make more sense to me. I mean, we're guessworking at this point because we're talking soul work. But it makes more sense to me that each incarnation would be vastly different so that the soul can experience all experiences, all lives, all cultures, all heritages, which are all interwoven anyway. But in terms of like each physical incarnation, it would make a lot more sense to me if they were wildly varied, just so that you didn't repeat over and over and over again, which doesn't lead to elevation. It doesn't lead to learning. It doesn't lead to growth. So I think that the DNA is very much tied to the physical incarnation, and then past lives is something else. Because I have seen people come at it from like, well, you can't have had a past life where you were an African because all your DNA is from this. And I'm like, I don't think that's how it works, but okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that we're body, you know, we're body, mind, and soul. So where our body has been, where our mind has been, where our soul has been, I think aren't necessarily all the same. So it makes sense that we pull from other areas. I think the thing with that though is that there is something to be said for just paying respect and general, like doing your research, regardless of what situation you're in with any of these that we're talking about. Because there is a culture there are families there are histories there are lives there, and that's important. That's not to be taken for granted. That's, you know, not to be mistold, misinterpreted, I guess I could say. So it is something that you handle with respect and you put the work in, you know. But not because it's something that you have to, like, I don't know. The thought of making it something that you have to earn just feels like bullshit to me.
I think
it's
what
more
it
so
is,
just.
I think what it is that there's people have paid in blood, in suffering, in experiences, in lives for their relationships to their deities. Now, look at the voodoo. The pantheons attached to voodoo. Okay, it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people because they stood by the slaves. Those deities came over with the slaves, and the people who were enslaved have been through a lot. They've suffered. Some were put to death, some of them were tortured, some of them were raped, some of them were, you know, worked to death, and to
some of them all of the above.
Yeah. And to just be like, yeah, I'm suddenly working with this god, or this god suddenly came to me, and to not have paid time, attention, research, respect.
Well, and there's also an element
all of that
with that too, in that kind of branch specifically, where people will come along and pick up those recipes and those things that have crafted and then take them and sell them for their own without really knowing the stories and the history there. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, is like just kind of grabbing it without knowing its story, knowing its essence, knowing its soul there. But again, that's something that I think is hard to say unless you're directly involved, mainly like that person. Because I mean, like Jessie just said in chat, she said, deity worship seems so personal to me, and there's so much that happens in ritual space that we never share with anyone. How could anyone ever know enough about someone's practice to pass judgment? You're not in that same space at that time with that person. You don't really know their story, their thought process, what's going on, what their path is, where they've been, where they're going.
I'm gonna go
so it's
pull
difficult.
up my thing. I've got a blog post that was posted on Witch, which is all about this, and I'm going to go find what I said on that.
That would be epic. Go do that. Do that fast. But yeah, that's exactly right. Like you can't really. It's like, you know, walk a mile in someone else's moccasins kind of situation.
Yeah.
You can't really. You think you have an idea, but the thing is that we make up stories about everything all the time. Mm-hmm. And these stories can be wonderful. They can be bullshit. And actually, that kind of brings me in. This is a little side tangent while she's doing that. I have seen the phrase, "it is what it is," 6 times in the last 2 days. Ugh. And I've been thinking about it, because here's the thing. I ranted to Joey like last week, I think, about the phrase, because I was like, you know, some people use it as a throwaway phrase because they don't want to deal with something, right? Like, well, it is what it is, whatever. And there's like that behind it, right? And it's like, no, that is what it is, because there's still some shit there. Mm-hmm. There's shit to deal with. There's things to set in whatever way you need to do that. But also having it is what it is as a statement of like, I simply am. As a statement of I stand. I said this earlier on Molly's live that Joey and I did. You know, the mountain doesn't have to justify its existence in the space it takes up. It simply is there. It simply belongs. And there's something to the it is what it is in that kind of side.
Nothing is immovable either. Like, change is the only constant of the universe.
Right.
So nothing is what it is.
Right. But the thing is in the state of, because even the mountain is eroding and building and but even within that statement is kind of, when you look at it from the mountain perspective, you have to look at your ancestry and stuff in a similar way too, right? I am what I am. It is what it is. And it's kind of like be careful of the stories that you build around things and other people, because stories have power. Stories are memory. And stories are how we pass on things. And the stories that we tell are very important. And I think that sometimes we can get lost in like only one perspective with them very easily. Mm-hmm. And we can feed things that we don't necessarily want to feed. So I know that's kind of a side tangent probably, but I feel like it pertains to this a little bit, like with ancestry, with, you know, who gets to work with who gets to practice, who really respects what. There are different levels of respect for different people. And also you're not there in the middle of the night when they're crying at their altar. You don't know what's said.
Exactly. That seems a good place. Are you in a good place if I read this now?
Yeah, do it.
So this is from Are You For Real, which is one of the first major pieces that I sent to Witch. So we have to remember that if a person chooses to share an aspect of their craft, it is likely they have been selective in this decision. They went through a psychological process before sharing it, deciding how much they wanted to share, where to post it, and even editing images attached to the idea in question. We cannot judge a witch's path based on such limited information, although why people want to do such a thing anyway irks me, unless they have invited us into their lives and share an incredibly personal aspect of themselves with us. We do not know them unless they have done this, and if they have shared their secrets with us, what sort of person does it make us to shame them after they trusted us with that information? Furthermore, it's none of our god or goddess damn business. The only person we should be so focused on is ourselves, how we practice, what we get out of it, what we have learned, and how we are breaking the mold of who we used to be. And then I talk about transcendence a bit, which is about I feel that sometimes we get to a point where we're having like a Ten of Swords moment, right? We're having a dark night of the soul. We're having a difficult moment, and we have a choice in that difficult moment. Some of us transform because of the 10 of Swords moments in our lives, and some of us cling to the familiar boundaries because it's safer to do so. And I feel like the safer, familiar boundaries are things like, you can't work with the goddess Morrigan, you're not Irish. Because that refuses to take on anybody else's perspective. It refuses to question what you know. All you can see in the very limited scope of that is, I don't appear to be Irish and you are, or whatever. And that's an incredibly very, very tightly boxed, very, very tightly wound worldview. And it doesn't question that worldview. It doesn't question the DNA. It doesn't question the interconnectedness through history. It doesn't question the traveling of the Celts. It doesn't, any of it.
There's also a whole other aspect of this that we haven't discussed. We talked about past lives. We talked about like a blood quantum, etc. But we also haven't really touched on the fact that the land that you grow up on itself works with you. The spirits of that land, the spirits of place, what you grow up with, what you move to, past lives oriented with that, also physical life, this life, specifically. I mean, I talk about Virginia because that's where I grew up. I live in Ohio now, but where I grew up in Virginia, the land is so alive to me and it sings, and I felt that from very young. There are all kinds of spirits on that land. And you're going to tell me that if I grew up with a different ethnicity on that land, but still being sensitive, still being, empathic or having some degree of that, like I wouldn't have worked with them to some degree. I wouldn't have, bonded with the land there. Just as I have in Ohio, it took a while to build. But, this has its own feel and its own kind of history that comes with that, its own culture within the dirt. And so, that's a whole other aspect that we haven't really talked of either. The land itself calls to people.
Yep.
And, those are the bones. Those are the bones in the blood.
Yeah, it's really interesting because one of the places that spoke to me the most, I mean, Scotland did do this, but one of the places that really, really spoke to me, and I could feel it, like in a way I had never felt up to that point before, was when I was a child. We were going on holiday and we passed through Switzerland, and we were only passing through and spent an overnight night there. So we were like 2 days and a night. But I could feel it, and it had such a profound impact on me that I still remember exactly how impactful it was. And I can remember what the land looked like. And I remember going through the mountain pass. I remember the waterfall that was on one side of the mountain pass and the trees. And I haven't been there since. I hope to go there again at some point soon. But I remember the huge impact that land and the spirits that had there on me. So
I always wonder, have any of you ever noticed, for those of you that do a lot of trance work and meditation work, have any of you ever noticed that a lot of the same landmarks and spaces come up? There might be little varying details, but there's always kind of core stuff. There's always like that cliff. There's always that clearing in the forest. There's always that cave. There's always, that grove. To some extent, there may be varying details, but they're always those landmarks.
Mm-hmm.
And, apart from obviously the psyche we could go into and having those and what they mean there, you have to think about, like, if we're thinking of the land and spirit of place there, then what is that land? What's the spirit of that place? Is that all of them? Then if we all go to these landmarks in our own way, what's the spirit? I mean, I'm sidetracking a little, but I just had that thought and was like, oh shit. Oh,
I just want to answer something quickly that's been asked in the chat, because Cris and I don't tend to give out a whole lot of book recommendations, because you can only go so far with books. And I will tell you honestly that growing up, I was obsessed with mythology. Obsessed. I had read most mythologies other than the Celtic one. I'd never come across the Celtic one for whatever reason. And I honestly feel like the Morrigan wanted me to avoid it until she was ready to full on come into my life. So with Deity, you have to remember that just because something is in a book, it doesn't make it a deeper experience. It doesn't make it the correct way of doing something. It's one way of doing it.
Alternately, you can find things in books. Books can be good kind of triggers, but they're not the be all end all. A lot of people can write a book. And still, again, we're going back to it being that person's relationship with their deity personally. So you were reading about someone else's relationship with something. So as much as that can tell you, it still can't tell you at all, because there's still a point where you put the book down and you go to your altar or you go to your meditative spot and you find one of those trance landmarks and you talk to them.
There you go.
Yes. But yeah, so spirits of place is another aspect of this. And I just find it very much a web that all of us are connected on, all the different threads, all the roots, the otherworld roots that Joy and I tend to talk about, intertwining. So let's see, what are some other things about Ancestry and DNA that are witchy that we could talk about? Do you guys have any questions with stuff? We'll put that out there now so we have time to get in.
So I got a good hour for it. I am going to just touch on that point that I think it was, Courtney said. I think sometimes focusing on myth can hinder you and your personal relationship with deity. So I think it is important personally to have read the myths. I think it is important to know the myths. I personally am not of the mindset that that's all there is, because from a historian's point of view, I know that we have lost a lot of myth throughout the years, particularly if a culture was oracular and they didn't really document it. The Celts, for instance, most of their written stuff comes from monks, Christian monks, who had their own biases, their own reasons for doing these things to write these myths down. And it's not necessarily the preservation of things as they were. So who knows what they omitted on purpose? Who knows what they changed? Who knows what is lost just because it never got recorded? So there's problems with mythology from like a historian point of view, which I'm highly hyper aware of because I studied history up to university level, and I love history. But the other thing is we have to remember that stories are supposed to be, if you take it from the Celtic perspective and possibly any other perspective, things that evolve, things that adapt, things that include our histories, things that are alive. Stories are not meant to be written on a stone tablet, never looked at, never analyzed, never changed. Oracular societies go about, they have whole, what would you call it? Okay, so with the Druids, you have bards, right? And bards are trained in the art, the magical art of storytelling and music. And that's an alive process, and that evolves and that changes and that adapts and takes on the personality of the bard themselves. And it where the message in the story is shifts very much like Ancestry would shift, and it's all stories and memories and retelling.
Yeah.
So myth is great. I love myth. It's a really
great.
I am a big fan of myth, but I will not listen to anybody telling me that that's all there is, because mythology should be alive, storytelling should be alive, and deity certainly evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was just thinking about that, and I was thinking about like the landmark stuff and watching chat, and I'm wondering, you know, if the reason that we're all able to go to that place is because we're thinking about the womb of Earth, essentially. We're all children of that. We're all part of Void and Spark. So we're all able to tap into that, but in different ways, in different routes. So if you look at it that way, that gives it another perspective too. But let's see. I just had something in my head on what you were saying. What was it again?
I was talking about knowing the myth, storytelling being evolutionary, God.
Storytelling, yes. Yeah. That. Thanks. Okay. So something also, guys, I'm just really accepting of this hair today. I'm just like, we're gonna send it love and just let it be itself. Okay. But I think also so in Southern communities in Southern America, like not South America, but just Southerners, y'all. Our elders are like really the core storytellers. The kids gather around the elderly and they tell you, you know, all the stories of, you know, your mom when she was little that she don't want you to know, and your uncles and all kinds of things. And, oh yeah, I remember that time she fell in the creek, you know, like all this stuff. And it's kind of a similar thing where it's like a tribal oracular tradition that gets, you know, all these stories. And sometimes I look at like our book of shadows, like our familial ones, right? Like the hereditary family ones that people will use sometimes. And I think, well, isn't that essentially what it is in a lot of ways? Isn't that essentially, you know, just it's the keeper of stories, the keeper of your storyline. We're all, you know, once upon a time. That was a tip of the hat to the podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I've heard that somewhere this month.
Yes, that's all Joey. But ancestry work, I think when we get into DNA, we run the risk of thinking a little bit too linear, a little bit too boxed in. We think that that's all we can do because that's all we are. And that sentence in general should just never come out of your fucking mouth as far as I'm concerned. How about that?
Like a line in the don't.
Yes. I don't want to hear you. That's all that I am. No. No. And the thing is like I think that we're allowed to explore as long as we do so with respect. I think that we're allowed to learn as long as we do so with respect. I think
what's allowed to? Who's allowing
exactly
you?
Well, that even as well. I mean, allowed, like, sorry, I got distracted by chat. I mean, I saw my name anyways. What I do? No, I think allowed, like, societal kind of thing that we think of, right? That like them, put it that way. But even that, I mean, it's your choice. It's your own personal power, which I think is really, you guys, the reason we're doing the Dark Goddess Rising thing is like, I'm tired of this shit. Okay? I'm tired of this shit. I've been on lives all day, so I guess I'm getting very blunt now. Yeah.
She says that like she's not very fucking blunt all the rest of the time. What bullshit.
Bullshit.
This is Capricorn for you right here. I'm gonna lay
with a Leo moon.
This is some Southern Capricorn, right? I'm gonna lay this right down here for you guys. I'm gonna lay it right and with a fan, like her grandmother does. I'm gonna lay it down.
I need a fan, man. Just whoosh. Like,
yeah. And then she'll point the fan at you. That's her grandmother who does this. She'll point the fan and be like, I'm gonna lay it out on you.
Look, you. I don't want to hear that sentence out of your mouth.
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
But again, that's your choice if you want to do that, because I ain't your ruler. I'm not your jailer. You do what you need to do. And I think that's kind of the bottom line of that. Ancestry work, we tend to think so linear. We think, oh, well, I am Anglo-Saxon, so I can only work within Anglo-Saxon, like, witchcraft. I was like, no. You are so many shades of human. Be them. Be them. Just be them. Explore them.
I need a fan now. I need like a preach.
You're right.
Yeah.
I'm a fan, you, Joey.
Like a preach. Like a preach. Thank you. Thank you. There we go.
Yes.
We're all kinds of crazy today.
We are. We started off with Lady Gaga. Y'all should have known.
Yeah. I mean, you should know what to expect by now, but we're approaching 4-0 of these lives. So
yeah, guys, I looked at the playlist yesterday last Friday, and we had 36 live shows that Joey and I have done together. 36, and now technically it's 38, counting this one because we need
to do something big for 4-0, which will be on your channel actually, because 39 will be on mine.
Every other. We'll figure it out. I don't know. What should we do, guys? What do you think? I haven't been on in a while. I haven't talked to you guys. How are you? How's life?
Anyway, alchemy. Where did alchemy come from?
Alchemize, bringing all things together, bringing all things through different things. The Magician card, for instance, is a really good example of this. Taking all of those elements and bringing it into one, manifesting as we wish. Yeah. I think ancestry work, though, one of the ways to get out of that linear thinking is to start exploring stuff like that, like attack it from a different angle, bring it into it. So, like, we think of even something like candle magic. Let's look at candle magic. Let's look at a candle. How many cultures has a candle been in?
Oh, I know a good example of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, it's not candles, but you know how brick powder.
I had one that's busted in front of me. So look at that.
Wow,
what am I gonna do with that?
I mean,
well, it was in my trunk. So it's very hot lately, and it got a little bendy. And then I went to grab something else, and it just.
Yeah, I mean.
So I'm gonna have to melt him back together, and just use him when I need a curveball or something, I guess.
Every innuendo in my head right now. So you bent him in your trunk, and he's out of shape.
I left him in my trunk, and he melted.
Breathe.
I'm just gonna drink my water. You carry on wherever you were going with this example. I'm gonna shut up now.
So the brick dust
example. I'm gonna do the Kermit.
Just do that. Often gets tied to the hoodoo brick dust. That only that they use brick dust and things. But you look at some of the components in that, like the clay, bibs and balls, and actually that's like some of the colors that cave people painted with. It's the same composite that they used in that as well, that clay dust, that brick dust. So there are elements across history. You can find similarities. One really interesting example, to me at least, is how we view the modern voodoo doll, because the modern voodoo doll didn't start off as a voodoo doll like it is today. The modern voodoo doll is actually an invention of Hollywood, and it is a crossover between the Bishow, I think it is, African spirit doll, which is they would bring these spirit dolls and they would pray to them to connect them to the gods, and the European witchcraft poppet, which was usually made from wax.
Which is one of my favorite words to hear her say in that. And one day, I swear, I will make a soundbite of it and just like make a phone theme for everyone to download, like Joey phone. Like,
Joey's word.
You have a message, Poppet.
Oh, she's my pimp. Anyway. Yes, ochre paint.
Right, don't get bit. All right, carry on.
With the fan, please.
I don't have, I guess it's...
Yeah, there you go.
This one's extra pimp because it's got like my lipstick mark on it.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. There.
Anyway.
Where was I? Okay. And so the European poppets were usually made of wax, but they could be like the material dolls, and they were used for sympathetic magic. So the poppets were like skinned, or they were like strangled or whatever. So that's where that element comes from. And then they meshed them in Hollywood, and the voodoo doll, as we know it today, was born. So I think that's a really interesting example of something which is very much associated with a particular form of spirituality and practice, really, but it actually has roots from other places. And actually the amalgamation of that is not even from a place of spirituality, it's from a place of like movies and things. So yeah, I think it's interesting. So
well, and there's a lot of things like that we think, oh, it's just from this place, but if you do a lot of research, you'll find very similar things in varied areas. That's like the the monkey study. You know what I'm talking about? I think it's the 10,000th monkey study. Yeah, there's something about like the transfer of knowledge, thought patterns. God, I wish I remembered this better right now, but whatever. Anyway, I'll see if I can find it again and share it on my Facebook.
Yeah.
But basically it was the study of how like we're all connected by a web, essentially, mentally, spiritually, and we're able to transfer thought across oceans, essentially. So a lot of cultures had very similar ideas around the same time that had no way of communicating to each other physically, and yet they did. So how did we all get this idea at the same exact time to do these same exact things, you know, all that. But I don't have details. Sorry. I guess I'll give them later when I find it again. But yeah. So ancestry. For me, with the native stuff growing up, in Virginia, there were a lot of reservations. And within the native culture, a lot of people, basically, if you aren't a card carrier, native. Now, Virginia is one of those that, no, we're not trying to kill you. No, breathe. Don't laugh. Look away.
Don't laugh. Look away.
Yeah, so like pyramids and ancient civilizations that had no contact with similar ones. Yes, exactly, Marwana. Yeah. But there was a study that was done along those lines. That's what I'm talking about, but I'll find it later. Anyway, so I dealt with that a lot in terms of like the visual stuff, the stereotypes of what you had to look like, what what defined you as that. And I always thought it was really strange that the government got to define if you were native or not, which in itself is kind of like, what the hell is happening right now?
Well,
do you like realize the history of this?
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah. And also within Virginia is one of those states that a lot of them kind of fled to the mountains to not have to deal with all of this, and blended in as best they could. Because of that, there are a lot of people to this day that you can like see it in them. You can feel it in them energetically, honestly. But they don't have the documentation necessarily. Especially like if they were very poor. I know like my dad's side of the family does not have a lot of documentation because his side was very poor. Very. So like we're talking, I can go back like a few generations, but most of what I've done isn't what I found online. It's through like getting lucky with people with family members that have hoarded things, essentially. Pure luck on that one. Which is again why stories are important.
Yeah.
To share and keep because of that.
I think maybe we should touch on the fact that which we haven't done, which is that you don't necessarily need a physical connection in order to work spiritually with your ancestors, because that's something that happened to me, and Cris actually helped me with that, is that I had this very set way in my head, which is what gets portrayed as how to work with your ancestors in spiritual circles, and that is have an ancestor altar with photographs that you've got from your own family members, and then you work from that place outwards. And I couldn't do that. So like to my mind, I was like, well, this is how everybody is talking about it. I've never heard any different. I don't have that. I can't work with my ancestors. And like Cris helped me. She had an amazing meditation. And it turned out that what I thought was a
which
block
you can
in the road.
find in my Ancestor Work 101 e-course. Go on.
Pimp. Anyway, it's not so much dinosaur being shouted out as pimp.
Dinosaur. Judas? If you guys are just tuning in, you'll have to catch that at the beginning, and that's why we're yelling dinosaur Judas. Yes.
And it turned out what I thought was a roadblock was actually just a pebble, because you are taught that you have to have a visual, you have to know what they look like, you have to have a very set idea, and that's really not the truth of it at all. In so much as I have experienced it.
I find that oftentimes, and I think I just said this to you the other day, Joy, oftentimes when people are like, I want to do ancestor work, they're like, I'm going to work with my grandma, like the immediate one, or like my aunt or my mom specifically. And the thing is there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But when I talk about ancestors, I want to go deeper. I want to go further out. Okay. What is an ancestor? What is an ancestor? Really deeper, think about that. What is the ancestor? What is ancestors? Candles is fine.
It's not. You bent it with your trunk.
Look, this one is fine and burning, as you can see. I'm gonna move this Palo Santo though, so it don't get melted on. And respect. Just hold on.
I got a sheet right there.
Own it. Oh yes. So, yes. I think people automatically go to like the loved ones that they knew, right? But the thing is like the ones that we didn't necessarily know us. They know us. They're with us. And just because you don't know them doesn't mean you don't know them. I know that sounds like really like, what the fuck, Cris? What did you just say? But there is, I mean, family is family. And even if some of them, like with Joey, she had a lot of trauma with her immediate family. So there was an element of like, no, I can't relate to my roots then. I can't relate to my family. And that's not necessarily true. You're thinking about the immediate ones. You're not thinking about all of these others. You're not thinking about the bones in the dirt that you're walking on. You're not thinking about those that literally support you right now.
I will tell you guys this. I did some of the ritual that Cris helped me with, and I had a really intense reaction to it, because they were all like, finally, like all these ancestors that I didn't know. And it felt like there were thousands upon thousands of hands reaching out and just touching me on the shoulders, like on around my back, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them. And it was like they were like multi-layered through the universe or whatever you like. And they were all like, we're here, we're here, we're here, we're here. And then they painted on my back, and they painted a symbol on my back, which I wasn't expecting because it was Nordic. And I was like, as I was coming out of it, I was like, what was that one again? And I heard the rune that it was, which was Othala. I heard them say it, And in that moment, I looked up Athala, and it was right. It was and I had one of those shivers moments of like, I heard that, and there it is, and it means family. And I was like,
yeah, yeah,
like that.
And Merwena says, I work with not only blood ones, but spiritual ones, like witches who've been burned or icons in history I feel kinship to. And the thing is that's what I meant when I said, who are your ancestors? Mm-hmm. Ancestor is ante-sedere. That's it. It means essentially gone before. A lot of people and things and beings have gone before. We think too literal sometimes.
Mm-hmm. We see too small.
Is that tree not your ancestor then? Are those rocks not your ancestor? How many breaths have been released into the wind? How often do you breathe it in? Your actual DNA is them too, yes. But you're around them. You're part of this. If you are pagan, oftentimes we believe we're an extension of the land. We're an extension of the earth. Mm-hmm. The earth is our mother, etc. Why are they not your ancestor too? Why is she not your ancestor? Why do we draw the line at Aunt Gertrude? Like, no offense to Aunt Gertie. I'm just saying, why do we draw the line there?
I'm just going to nip to the bathroom, guys, if that's okay.
Yeah, you do your thing. The reason I talk about ancestry so much, guys, is because this is how I grew up. I grew up with my mother around a circle, a bonfire in the backyard usually, or in the living room. We did not bring the bonfire. We used a small candle. And we called in the ancestors. We worked with them. We worked with the heartbeat of the earth. We worked with setting that sacred space, and we invited everyone in to also bring theirs too. And in this, we kind of found that they all connect. They all connect. My ancestors are your ancestors. There are layers to this. It's not as face value there. Yes, I would say deity could also be our ancestor. It's all energy, right? If we are all part of the all, if spirit makes us up, where do we draw the line there? That's really up for us to decide. But when you think about it in that way, it adds all new layers. And then it goes, okay, so where is this line? It's hard for me to linear think when it comes to that. Because, I mean, I was raised literally seeing people walk in thinking that they weren't connected to anyone, or they only had like the one dead relative that they knew. And I saw them leave with a parade, knowing that the parade was there. And that's fucking powerful. We look so hard to belong sometimes and don't realize that we already do. We're already surrounded. When I said, we're supported by the ground right now, it's true. And it's also our ancestors. So, yeah, that's why I talk about ancestry. That's why I talk about ancestral work. Because it all connects for me. It's the core, it's home, it's hearth fire, it's council fire that travels all the times, all spaces, all the sacred spots for those who have drummed and danced and sang and story told, all of them. The fire itself, the spark of life within the Wheel of Hecate, within anything that you want to look up with. We could even talk about the Big Bang. It's in all of us. What is ancestry? I'll leave you with that thought. No. So what's going on in chat? Because Joey just left me hanging. Aunt Gertie was my Native American ancestor's name, actually. Holy shit, Chrome. Didn't mean to do that, but that's funny. If we were also our DNA that is brushed off, breathe in and out, the universe wastes nothing, spiral in and out of time and is. That's Gargoyle. Sorry, garlic, not garlic. Gargoyle Mistress 30. Yeah, exactly. Nothing is wasted. Sarah Klein says, we are never alone. The ancestors are always with us. Mud between our toes. Yes. Dirt on our heels. Wind in our lungs. Words from our lips. Fire in our hearts. We are all connected to Ancestor. The universe within us. Yes. Absolutely. I think there's also, and in the course I talk about like the difference between like an ancestor, an ancestor, the ancestors and ancestors. I feel like those are kind of three different perspectives to kind of the same trend. Yes, sorry, you are not garlic. I'm sure you do not smell like garlic, but I will say that I do love garlic. It is one of my favorite things. Tracy says, we are our own ancestors. We are they are us. Absolutely. We are living ancestors. I talk about that too in the course. Sorry. I'm not trying to mass plug. It's just, I talk about this a lot.
Is she mass plugging? I'm not here. Was I not here to rein her in?
Essentially, I made my case for like, you know, ancestors and ancestor, the ancestors, and like deity being our ancestor, etc., the land.
And where is all the garlic coming from in the chat? Like,
because I accidentally said garlic mistress instead of gargle mistress, and I corrected myself, and then I was like, but I like garlic.
Oh, who doesn't like garlic?
Yeah, it's delicious. Ooh, caramelized garlic chicken. That sounds, look, don't make me hungry, Tracy.
That sounds good.
I will cut this short. Yes. So, any questions, guys? Any thoughts on things? I know I've seen some people like, my mind is now blown. So, I didn't mean to overload you. I'm just saying, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And so, if you ever want me to explore anything else in that, you're welcome to message me. You're welcome to put it on here right now. Any of that. I love this topic. Love. But yeah, even that's why we sang about amoebas and stuff.
Yeah.
Earlier on. You know, because like, yeah, we're joking, but also kind of true.
That's earth signs for you. It's a joke, but it's factual.
Yeah, it is. You know what? I was fighting. Do any of you have the Evil Apples app? It's basically like Cards Against Humanity. I'm going somewhere with this, Joey. It's
okay.
Basically like Cards Against Humanity. And I forgot where I was going now. Shit. That fast. Gone.
Cards Against Humanity version of Evil Apples. With DNA and Ancestry, presumably.
I have nothing. I don't know. Carry on. I have no idea what I was going to say about that.
Did you get lost?
I had some kind of funny story. But, yep, all right. Yes, Dune.
I want chips.
You've already eaten.
Also,
I want some chips.
Before I went there.
Well, you didn't tell me.
Actually, if you wanted that,
You didn't say you were going to the chip shop.
I didn't know until I was halfway down there.
I want chips. I'll take some chips.
We all want some chips now.
Everybody, who wants chips? Anybody in the chat? We'll get them to bring them. They might take a little while to get there, though. No promises on fresh.
But just let me have some of yours then.
Why?
Because you didn't get me any.
I have no idea how I got the evil apples. Damn it, that's gonna kill me now.
Just bring me some chips. Don't mean. Because you're not a meanie. Garlic chips. Garlic chips sounds amazing.
Yes.
Actually, chips and a good fucking.
Oh my god, I kind of want Lebanese food now, guys. This is no. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what else have we not covered? Anything?
I would never have to go back through. But since I won't hear the end of it.
Is he going to get them?
He's going to share some chips with me. Yeah.
Yay. Good.
I did order chips and cheese, but it seems that
you've got chips and cheese.
they've given me a slab of cheese.
Yep.
Nom, nom, nom.
So, chips and cheese and vinegar. Oh my gosh, I haven't had that in so long, Jesse. Oh, that was like Fireman's Carnival back home.
Why did I become Jeffrey the fucking butler?
I am, man.
Fucking butler.
I am hungry, actually. I haven't. Did I eat?
No, you didn't eat.
No, I did. I ate. Well, I mean, I didn't eat as many meals as I should have, but I definitely ate this morning.
Everyone watching.
I've been up
Gets
since
something
about.
that she doesn't want, and then she'll eat half of mine.
Ashbjorn. Hey, let it be known that he was called Ashbjorn again. So someone else merged our names.
I don't know how much you want, so.
We've done that. We've done that as well.
Asbjorn the Generous.
Zarklani, we've done that with our own names before. Ashbjorn.
Thank you.
I'll go and eat my
Right
slab of
now,
cheese
he's
now.
made the entire chat want chips. Tell him go away.
The entire
making us all-
chat wants chips now. He's going now. I've got a little few. So.
Stay true, stay awesome, stay cheesy. If you get chips and cheese, make sure it's not.
Bring us chips and we'll stay cheesy.
Chris says, "Bring chips, we'll stay cheesy."
No, that's okay. No, it's fine, Zarklani. She's like, I'm so sorry I spilled it wrong. No, it's fine. I actually found it funny that you merged us both because we do that.
If talking about past lives, they were actually in the past life.
Yeah. We didn't even really get into that story.
You want to tell that story? We've got time.
Yeah, sure. So sorry. Well, first of all, let's tell it this way. So Joey and I, when we first started talking, we're like, I know you. I know you so easy that I'm able to we'll do ritual together and I can connect with her like that. Like it's not even work.
No.
To the extent that we will merge astral plane wise and become it's like a freaking transformer. Like when you put our two energies together, we become something else. Yeah. And I've never had that happen like that. So I've never been able to do that, like where it's actually one being with two.
Mm-hmm.
And so right then I was like, all right, something's up here, dude. What's that? And then also I noticed that if you put our faces next to each other, our eyes are actually very similar, which is a little
Our
creepy.
noses aren't that dissimilar either.
Yeah.
Like here.
A little bit. Mine's like
here and
rounded.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. But side note, we were like, is there anything to that? That's funny, huh? And then we just kind of left it. And then Jory, do you want to tell the vision that you saw since you're the one who saw it?
I saw something that I can do because of the conduit thing is that I sometimes get a peek into past lives. And I can follow people's energy lines, and if they ask me to and I really work at it, I can see other people's past lives for them sometimes too. It's a very difficult process for me because obviously it's not my line, but I can do it. But when I think it was around summer solstice before, like a year ago on summer solstice time, because Chris and I had done ritual together. And later I had a few flashes, and then I kind of chased the flashes to see what would happen. And I got visions of our past life together, which Chris was in and Asbjorn was in too. So in that lifetime, I was a Celtic Celt with the markings.
A Celt.
Probably Scottish Celt. I get the feeling. And both Chris and Darren were Viking, and they were related, brother and sister. And he was older, which didn't happen in this lifetime. And in that lifetime, he was a straight man. And I don't mean he's a gay man in this lifetime. Who knows sometimes, but no. But what I mean is he was very stoic. He didn't laugh. He didn't joke. He wasn't like a trickster like he is in this lifetime. And he was like the eldest, and he was a kind of like head of the household, very serious. And Chris would take the piss out of him like nonstop because
I'm me,
and she was a shield. And they had been.
No, wait. So what's interesting about this is that previous to this, like years before, I had visions of me like in, I guess what could be called berserker rage, like covered in blood, full on battle scream frenzy.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my lives are not like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the few that's like, oh my, all right.
Mm-hmm.
but I had no other context, just a flash vision, and that was it. So when Joey said this, I was like,
the other thing that freaked Cris out a bit was that I saw what her battle paint looked like, and it was actually a look that she'd been obsessed with in this life, which is the neck being painted like quite high up to about here.
I actually did it for those of you who were following the Hellcape Death paint pictures. I actually ended up doing it for the bone color, and like her talking about this, and I was like, shit, dude.
Yeah.
And she didn't know about that.
No, I hadn't.
I hadn't shared them.
And they were a family under Odin, and given they've both got Odinic connections in this lifetime, so like Odin was, it was like the certain Viking households. Yeah,
we just finished talking about like all everybody is, but whatever. Yeah,
yeah. I'm using air quotation marks. Okay, the little earwings. And the household was under Odin. And there was this idea that there were different clans that were more affiliated with different Viking gods, but they were very Odinic. Anyway, the Vikings had been raiding the coastline with where the Celts were, and it was they were coming to speak to the Celts. And I had actually, as a Celt, I was in the woods when they landed, and they like some of them had gone into the woods, and Asbjorn, as he was then, had gone off further into the woods by himself. And I like leapt out from the trees with a dagger against his throat. And we were like fighting. And I won that fight because I knew the terrain. Like I knew in my head that's why I'd won it. Like he was like he was much stronger than me. I was quicker, but I won because I knew the terrain, so I knew how to trip him up, that sort of thing. And when I won, he was on the floor, and I got on top of him with my knife against his throat, and then I kissed his nose, giggled, and ran off. And I remember like, what the fuck is this memory? And it turns out anyway that I was the daughter of the Celtic chieftain that they were coming to see. And Asbjorn in that lifetime had not taken a wife, and he decided that he would take me as his wife because of the fight in me, and it would cement the alliance that was brought forward. And I remember Cris being like, all the fucking Viking women you could have married, and you marry a Celt, like
a crazy Celt at that.
Yeah. And she had the same like eyebrows in this lifetime, like. But she was like being funny with him. She was like mocking him because he'd had other offers and had rejected them and that sort of thing. And he was very stoic. And because he was a straight man, he was like, and Cris was just like cracking up about it. So we did, and then it flashed forward to our deaths. So there was a point between that point which I didn't get to see, but I didn't actually see me die. I actually saw that he came running after me in the woods, and I had my throat cut and my belly stabbed because I was pregnant. And he hadn't known that I was pregnant until he found me like that. And he did this unholy scream because he realized he'd lost 2 instead of 1. And he fell on his own sword because he couldn't take it. And what had actually happened is there was a group of people who were against the alliance, and they were attacking anyone who had agreed to it. So they were coming for the people that had agreed to stay with the Celts and the people who had married in and all that sort of thing. And Cris was like holding off some of them like at spear point to try and allow him to get to me. And Cris at that point died by a spear to the back of the throat and up through her mouth. And she didn't actually have war paint on the back of her neck. And so it all came up.
Which is flavors of the voice stuff that I talk about on here, guys, and working through. That's also a part of it. It's continued from a past life thing as well. Like just talking about it. So
I got visions of that summer solstice, and it went towards explaining some of the things that had happened in this lifetime. but we feel like we've known each other more than one life. So, and you've known him more than one.
And well, and even past lives, you could get into our. I mean, that's something to debate on its own. And again, we think very linear, but is time that linear? You know,
I don't think so. See, my theory is, and it's just a theory, obviously, but I was talking about.
Also, I should say that as she was telling me this, I was having very vivid flashbacks and basically feeling it all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks, friend.
You're welcome.
But yeah, that was a thing.
But in the podcast, we've been talking about time, and this one's actually available. The whole podcast is available publicly if you want to hear us talk about time in more depth. But I was theorizing, like, what if we're actually living out all of our lives in multiverses simultaneously? And that's why we can pick up on things. And the soul is actually spread over many, 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 many lives.
I always kind of pictured it kind of like a flower of life thing. Like all of these circles are also all of our lives going on at once. And they're like, they're all lessons intertwined. And we think that this is now here, but
actually the soul is experiencing. And that's maybe why we get deja vu. And that's maybe why we get really intense dreams, which make no freaking sense because we've never lived. We
think we can only exist here, but no, we're in many places.
That's my theory, that we're actually living out many, many, many lives all at once.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Shakti. I don't usually see you in here, so hi. Yeah, definitely. And I think that was something that I had to make peace with anyway when I was younger, because I had kind of all my past lives I'm really skeptical of when they first come up. Like, every time I'm like, yeah, okay. Like just that face. And then like, it's like the information is given to me or the flash is given to me. And then like a year or two later, after I've forgotten about it, something comes up and it's like, hey, did you know that this happened? And it was like, how did you know that?
Mm-hmm. We got confirmation of it somehow as well, didn't we? Hey, Floof. Hey, baby boo.
I'm sure we did.
Hey, kitty.
But I've had a couple like that. I know there was something that my mom had a vision of when I was younger. And I was like, yeah, right. That I was essentially a blind seer.
Kitty tail. We got a cat tail. She's gone now, but there was a cat tail down here. We got a tail on camera.
This is why we can't bullet point, guys. It's because we're both so like all over. But yeah, so with that life, I was a blind seer, an older Native woman, older at the time anyway, and that was a whole like thing. Like I got laid out like the whole story and I was like, yeah, okay, Mom. Because I was like 14 or something, 13.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, okay, whatever. She's like crying, like, I saw this and da-da-da, and I was your mother then. And I'm like, okay, Mom, sure. All right. I don't know about all that. Like, how cheesy is it to be like the blind seer, right? So I was like, yeah, okay. And and I'm like really heavy into my native roots and blah blah blah. Yeah, okay, that's convenient. And then I shit you not, I had a friend who did past life readings, and she had finished one and she was still in that channel and hadn't like shut it fully off yet. And she was like, meow, right at me. And I'm like, and she continues to tell me everything that my mother told me when I was 14. Had no way of knowing. Complete chills down my body. So, yeah. That was...
I tell you, the one we did get confirmation of is the one when we were slaves.
Yeah, that's the thing. But so here's the thing. So the seer though is the one that when I am in ritual space, she's very dominant. But when I slip into that, like all of us have kind of that.
I can actually see it now. You're talking about it. Is that weird?
No. that inner wise one that kind of takes over whatever that is for us. When we get into ritual space, I think there's a connection to kind of that tapping into all of those. And there tends to be one or two or a few that kind of lead it. And for me, she's the one that usually leads it. And so when I get into that, I am like a mountain, like she who shall not be moved. Dare ya. And that was the face I always saw, like whenever I'd scrying in mirrors, scrying in windows, staring into flames. Guess who's staring back? This old blind woman. And I'm like 16 doing my rituals at my altar with this old blind woman on my face, like, okay, that's weird. And then this happens and confirms it all. So the thing is like, yeah, be a skeptic if you want, and that's fine. But there are ways to confirm things to you. It comes around, it comes out the wash. It's going to keep getting shown to you until you're like, oh, well, all right then.
I mean, I can understand the skeptical point of view, because I can understand it. Like, the problem is that everybody claims that they are someone famous from history, that sort of thing.
Right. And that's why I was like, okay, blind seer.
Yeah. And, you know, nobody wants to be the poor person who died of influenza or, you know, that sort of thing. And I think there's a difference between whether you feel that what you are seeing is making, like, serving you in this lifetime, as in, oh, look how cool I am, I had this past life as Queen Elizabeth, or whether it's just coming to you in bits and drabs and you're like, oh, and weird, and oh, what does that mean? And there's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think sometimes that it's the ones that we know we did, like, you know, quote unquote big things in, that maybe we have a lot heavier lessons with too. And that's why a lot of those tend to come up, honestly. I think that there's layers to that as well. Yeah. Do I think multiple personalities could be related to past lives? I think that multiple personality is something that is medical. And I mean, I don't diagnose, so I can't really say. I'm not a doctor with that. But I do know that there are places in the world that shamans do look at things like that as being spirit work, as being balancing of the body and its energetic being, and like spirit tag-ons and things like that.
There's one like a fractured soul theory, isn't there? Like one of the shamans think it's a fractured soul thing.
And I mean, even within that, even within saying shaman, there are many kinds of, because shaman is like an umbrella word now, unfortunately, or fortunately, like neo shaman especially. I'll get on like a whole soapbox about this if you let me. But anyway, it's Eastern Mongolian, the root of it. But because of anthropologists and such, it's come to be kind of known as like a tribal healer, period, in a lot of different indigenous or kind of secluded cultures. And they all have very interesting views on things like that, things like cancer and you know, migraines, even stuff like that is all, you know, them working in the medial between like kind of the spirit realm. Between the spirit realm. Yeah, shaman sickness, between the spirit realm and between the physical. But again, I ain't a doctor, so I ain't touching that one.
Sometimes I wonder if archetypes that I cling to are tied to past lives as well.
Maybe they are.
I mean, I think archetypes cross time. I think archetypes can be found from the beginning of time. I think they might evolve slightly depending on the time we live in, but I think you can trace them right back.
So one of the first videos that I ever did with Joey, I was on her channel. It was my first one on her channel. And she asked me, explain how you see deity. And I used my tree analogy. And when I think of archetypes, they kind of fall into that. So if the trunk of the tree is everything, it's the all, it's the energy, it's one source, whatever you want to work with, whatever you want to call that. And then from that, you have kind of the big limbs that start out, right? Like the solid, beefy limbs. And those are kind of your archetypes. And then within that, you've got your branches that are still sturdy, but they're a little smaller. There's more of them. And those would be more so your pantheons, perhaps, or, you know, cultures. And then beyond that is your twigs, right? That's your specific deities. And then beyond that is the leaves, and that's us.
Mm.
And I think that kind of, and you can go with the roots the same way too. But I think that kind of is how I see that splay of things. They're all kind of connected, and to think that they're not, we just kind of get stuck in one spot on that tree. It's a whole tree. So I think of like even with deities, I see them as individual, absolutely, but I also see them as the part of that trunk. I see them as multifaceted. I see them as archetypal, but I also see them as personified and almost hard polytheist, but not. So I guess you could call me a soft polytheist in a lot of ways. Because I like to sit in the middle and go, I mean, all of it though, guys.
Yeah. I will say I think migraines are shaman sickness, or they can be a result of traveling to the other world, particularly if you're working with hell or other death goddesses. Because I've had, on occasion, hell has been like, Cris isn't listening to me, and you're going to speak for me for a minute, and then the next day you will always have a migraine.
Yeah.
Always.
What was that one day she grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and pulled me down and was like, yep, we're going now. And like Joey and I sentence talking, and it was like, nope. And it was so fast. I had a migraine for, it was like the whole next day. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's also the time that I stepped on a big old nail right before working with the, I shit you not, blood color for her paint. No real blood was used in the making of that.
Just all over the pavement.
None used in it. Yeah, and there's a lot of that. So migraines, foot pain too. Like sometimes I get like that weird stiff. You know how you get like a bone lock, if anybody's ever had that, where like your foot or your wrist just kind of locks up and it like feels like I'm gonna die, and then suddenly it's like, oh, never mind.
I hate that pain.
Pain is I got that in my foot a lot, and I refer to it as lovingly my hell foot, because it acts up anytime it's like, you got some work to do. Let's go.
Quite a lot of them will cut you as well. Like if Freya does this, and so I have kind of like a secondary connection to Freya in that Freya is like a sister goddess to me. If Morrigan is my matron and is my mother, then Freya is kind of like a sister energy to me. She takes care of, like an older sister. She kind of takes care of me. She cares about what's happening to me. She's guided me on occasion. But every single time I interact with her on any level, whether it's to physically make stuff for her, for other people, whether it's she wants to speak to me, I bleed. I will get cut, usually on my hands, but not always. Usually on my hands, but not always. Every single time, without fail. And if I've made something and I think, I didn't bleed, you give it 30 minutes and you'll be bleeding more than you thought you were going to be. And I'm like, Argh.
Another part of that too is like with energy work and stuff, you have to kind of, aside from this, you also have to figure out, if you're doing energy work, how that feels in your body, what your energy feels like when you're doing energy work, because that's different. And it manifests differently for each person. I know some people, when they do energy work, they feel very like, it's almost minty. It's cool. It's minty. It has this like kind of staticky, sparkly kind of sensation, like a really strong Altoid. I don't know how else to say it, but they have that kind of energy to them. My mother and I, for instance, are like big suns. Like we're just like beaming sun heat, just that sound.
That exact sound.
That sound. Let me heal you. Yeah. But yeah, so it's just
it's
like
terrifying. Heal you.
Furnace, full on, like, yeah. So for us, there's a heat that comes. But each person feels things differently. Each person kind of, it shows up, and they'll feel it in, like, I know Shakti's talking about this, different parts of your body, you'll feel it in. For me, when I know, for instance, that hell's about to pull me under, I get it in the back of my head, like back of my neck, which is why, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. Joey, guide me. Can we see
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yes. I was tempted not to say anything, but yes.
Thanks for the solid.
Even though I was honest about being tempted and I didn't do it. So you know I love you. Carry on.
Appreciate it. But there's a reason that that's there, is because that's where I kind of get activated. That's where I tend to feel it a lot. So that is Hell's Rune, Hagaloth, and then Issa put in it. It's a bind rune that she gave to me. It's also on the top of this mirror, but you guys barely ever see that. And it's basically a protection rune and a dedication at the same time. It says, if you go through this gateway, you go through her. You have her approval. It also says this gateway is yours to hell, essentially, and to say, you know, like, I serve you. What I do in your name. And yeah, so for me, that's one of my places. My hands are also another, and that's why I have these, which you guys probably barely ever see. I know they're kanji, and that seems kind of left field. I was 18. Come on, y'all. But the sentiment behind it was that I take in strength from the situations around me and leave laughter in place of it. It was a statement to the world. These were my first tattoos, and they were a point of alchemization. Alchemization? Is that a fucking word?
Yes, go for it.
Yes, we made it a word. But it was a point of, like, I'm ready for the world. Anything that comes at me, I will take it. I will grow from it, and I will leave positivity, happiness, something better from it. And that was like my first ones, and that's with hands too, right? So it has to do with what I'm doing in the world.
I'm getting
so you also have to
right here, just so you know. I'm getting a pain right here as we're talking about it.
You have to be mindful of your own energy, basically, and then mindful of your deities and how that works. But it's things that you got to explore. And the best way to explore it, like we said about books earlier, is to sit down and feel it and you know, feel it out and ask. You are your own map. You are your own book. Read yourself.
I will say, just to give some variance on how I experience these things, quite often I will get visual cues first. So I will see things out the corner of my eyes. I'll see energy move. I'll see spirits move. I'll see like white sparkly dots out the corner of my eye that move. Or sometimes I do get the shadow ones. And I get a lot of pain in my throat when they want to speak to me, like here. And it feels like having a really tight frog in the throat. And you're like that, because they want to speak, and they want that. Usually when it's that, they want to speak through, and they want to speak to Cris, or they want to speak to us both. Because if it's just me, I'll
they just want to yell at us all, and it's okay.
Yeah.
We just take it because we're used to it.
But I too had I get scent.
Smells are a big one too. Yeah,
scent was a later one for me, though, I have to say. Now my first gift was clairvoyance.
Excuse me.
And I had clairvoyance, my middle sister had clairaudience, and my baby sister had clairsentience. Baby sister rejected her gifts out from the gate, and for a while my middle sister and I were just these two things, and then we began to develop each other's, and we both got clairsentience very quickly, presumably because baby sister rejected it utterly. And so quite a lot of my cues come through visual first, and I wonder if it's just how we're kind of like where we strongly link. And when Chris has had messages though from hell, I've looked down and suddenly I'm like, why have I got great big red marks all down my feet? Because that was what happened last time. Like I was like, ow, my feet.
That is something to note too, that for whatever reason, hell is not as big on the blood thing as a lot of other Norse gods are. She's more about pain.
Well, if she rules in an afterlife, there would be less blood and more pain, I suppose. That would be more of a like currency of afterlife more than blood, I suppose.
Well, rotating spiral is energy, and it's time.
It's
and
inward and outward.
It's inward and outward. It's the womb. It's the umbilical cord.
Labyrinth.
I mean, spiral is one of the oldest symbols. It has a ton of meaning to it.
Do you see anything else? Do you get any more colors or shapes or feelings or scents or anything else with it? I mean, I assume that's to something else other than the rotating spiral. Log in and off from your eyesight.
Yeah. We are going to cut this short soon, guys. So if you do have any questions about Ancestry, DNA, any of the things we've discussed,
now is the last chance. Yeah.
Please put them in chat so we can address them, because we do have to go soon. I got to pick my husband up and whatnot.
Not literally.
I mean, maybe I could try. I try sometimes, and he just goes, while I'm trying, like this is his face, just unamused, like you're not gonna, it's not okay. And I'm like,
sometimes they turn into runes when I'm working with Odin. It's a very Odin month, by the way. Go listen to the podcast.
I already figured you worked with him, Chrome. He's already talked to me.
Sometimes I get the scent of orange blossoms. You know, the last time I got a major orange blossom scent, I was given a past life vision when I lived in Spain.
Orange blossom. I knew that scent was a big part. Well, with the wolf energy around me as well, scent was definitely a part of it. And I noticed that, like, I could tell, for instance, at work, I could tell who was at work by the smell in the air. Like, I could pinpoint, which is a little creeperish. But I could tell, and I don't mean it because it was like, these people have such strong perfumes. No, it was like the combination of the perfume with their kind of pheromones, their body chemistry. I could tell who it was just from walking in the back hall. Like, oh,
so this is something you want to admit on.
No, because there's any kind of an acute sense to smell. So when I do smell things, I pay a lot of attention to it.
Yeah,
because it's kind of like a heightened sense in some ways. So with spirit work and stuff, I will often smell like cigars or my dad's cigarette smoke, the specific smell of cigarette smoke on clothes, because it does take on a different smell. That oftentimes, or like menthol.
My grandma has a very interesting lavender, a very particular lavender soap scent that I've never smelled anywhere else, and that I always know. Or I come home and my kitchen smells like her kitchen used to smell like.
And I'll also venture to add in too that it's not only with people who are dead. My mother is quite alive, and I have smelled her when she was thinking of me and went, oh, let me call Mom. And she was like, you heard me, didn't you? Well, no, I smelled you, but what do you want?
If I heard, I mean, got a nose full, then sure.
Okay, so any plans today because of the new moon?
I got up in the middle of the night. I mean, I've been having a rough time with my emotions. And I actually got up in the middle of the night and I was like pissed off at some shit, and I messaged Chris. But after I did that, I did some spell work already. And I basically called to my ancestors in this time of opening doors, and I said, I just want to be guided and I just want truth. And those are the things I asked for the new moon, if you like. Oh, my grandpop used to drink Newcastle brown ale. So I get that when he's around. He doesn't come very often though, I have to say. He doesn't show up that often.
Old Spice. Yep. I can see that. My dad had Brute. Yeah, and that was his like Sunday best cologne. So yeah, so that's when he's being fancy. But most of the time it just smells like cigarette on cotton on linen. So my plans for new moon. Well, on Patreon I'm starting one of 2 rituals for the month that forms a gateway, a portal, and that's today. So that we like walking through that threshold today to start that. And for the next 2 weeks, kind of like weeding through things within that liminal space. And then honestly, I'm probably going to just have a space unto myself in the backyard. And when I say a space, I mean literally like I'm going to walk out there barefoot, because always barefoot when I'm outside, if possible. That's how I got a screw in my foot. Yeah. But I usually just walk out and talk to the moon, talk to the grandmothers. It's generally very impromptu. I don't do really elaborate unless it's like really striking me to do so. So I'll do the walking through ritual for the Patreon and take part in that. And then I kind of start this process of weeding through things and doing away with like habits and noticing it and becoming very aware within that subconscious. Essentially shadow work for the next 2 weeks.
I need some burning tonight, I think.
Yeah. And then after I do that, I'll walk outside and talk to the moon and have a conversation with the grandmothers, the ancestors, and heart to heart, give them love, receive love, and give thanks and receive, that thanks in return. And yeah. And I think that's important to mention too, now that I'm saying that. I think we always think about giving thanks, but we have a hard time receiving it. And they will thank us too.
Yeah.
They will absolutely thank us too. So it goes both ways. Yeah. And so essentially I just kind of open myself up to that. And then kind of just feel my feet in the ground for a while. That's the most therapeutic thing for me anyway, is just like to plant my feet in dirt and grass. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to do. I'm not like, I'm going to build a stone circle. Like, no, we're going to walk through as a group and go into a threshold, liminal space, do some work. And then I'm going to go talk to my grandmas.
I will say that the mini energy podcast is on my Patreon already for anyone who's on my Patreon for the new moon energies. And I was chatting about birth energies, river energies, and the emotional crossroads that we're finding ourselves at. So that's already up on my Patreon for anyone who is a part of that already.
Yeah.
How about hair pulls or fingers running down your face? Yes, both.
Yeah. They don't mess with my hair so much because it makes me annoyed and I'll yell at them. Like, that little baby hair thing right up here? I hate that shit. Don't stop.
Yeah, I tend to get it in my ears. That's, right in the...
I tend to get it with chills a lot. And I will get like the shoulder touch. My ancestors in particular, my grandmother likes to rest her hand on my shoulder. I have 2 actually. One will take one side and the other will take the other. And according to what shoulder it is, that's how I know instantly like who it is. They tend to prefer a shoulder for some reason. I don't know.
I get it on the leg a lot, like on my lower leg, like I'll get the chill there. That's where it starts.
I get kind of the brushing across my feet. That's a thing. Like, how like, if you were sitting and a cattail just kind of dragged across?
Yeah.
That sensation, or like a hair from a brush or something, just kind of, it's very light, like a tickling. I'll get that a lot. And then the running down the face thing, I get like the tickles, right? Like on the sides. But I don't get like the full on, thing. I have only had like this when I'm in meditation, and I'll feel it as I'm experiencing it in the meditation. And that's my grandmother's, of course, again. They come up a lot in my practice, guys, basically.
Yeah.
yeah, my ears. Okay, so I've come to figure out that when it is an older woman, usually, who tends to be very demanding, we'll say nicely, it's like my ear goes out and there's the ringing, but it's muffled first, then the ringing starts, and it's like energetically this like arthritic finger in my ear going, "You tell them,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, I can't, because I can't hear you right now because you're just shouting way too loud
In my ear. Yeah.
So that's part of it. Sometimes in sessions, for those of you who've had sessions with me, when that happens, it's like, hold on, give me a second. Oh, I'm gonna need you to like dial it back and work with me here. This is how we do this. So yeah, no, there are many different ways to experience it. There are many different ways, and you kind of have to find yours. And the only way to do that is to explore it. Obviously, be safe. If you're getting a gut feeling about things, don't continue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, trust your gut. It's there for a reason. But if you think you have issues that you have to push past, then do some work around it and figure that out. Figure that out first, I would say, because we can put things into situations that wouldn't necessarily have been there were we to kind of check our fear at the door. So also be mindful of that.
Yeah.
But do trust your instincts. I am going to shut this down now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we love your faces. Oh, yay. Lily's going to do the sisterhood journey tonight. Yay.
Yes.
Good. I love that one. Also, for you guys that are not part of our newsletter, either me or Joey.
Hop.
Yeah, why not? Also, we sent that journey out actually to our newsletter.
Yep.
As a thank you for being supportive and everything, but also as kind of an offering of belonging and peace and release, embrace at the same time, to be embraced, to be held in that moment. And so I don't know about you, Joey, but I'm probably going to send it out again today.
We can do that. Sure.
I'm going to send it one more time later today.
Sure. Can you send me the link again, just so I have
absolutely
it in my inbox again?
But that's the last time I'm sending it, and it's not public. So if you guys would like to receive that, go to my CrisAshburn.com or StarryEyedSupplies.com or both, and subscribe, and you can see.
There's more than just the journey. There's all sorts of goodness.
There is. But yeah, so if you guys feel like you need some peace and a sense of belonging, and maybe just kind of to be held with these matriarchal women that we've been talking about a lot today, that journey will help with that. So it's up to you. Do it if you would like. I would like you to. Joy would like you to. But it's your opinion. It's your choice. Yep, that is CrisAshburn.com and StarryEyedSupplies.com. It should be on the main page. If you scroll down just a little bit, it should be right there. So with that said, we're going to end this. I am going to say one more thing that's kind of, it's advertising. It's not kind of, it straight up is. Joey had a new book come out, and if you guys don't know about that, it's her first book ever. I'm going to click you up so they can see the lovely cover art that Molly Roberts did. It's so freaking pretty. I have seen inside this book. I have ordered this book. If you guys don't know about it, please go check it out. It's beautiful. Joey's work is beautiful, just like her face. And
there's a few more copies available now as well, because I've just had a lot of people be like, we still would like to order it. So I'm just going to say what is happening with this is I have made a certain amount of copies available and I have ordered them. So the people who have already ordered them and who are waiting currently, I have put an order in for that many to the publisher. And as soon as they get here, I'll send them out to you. So that's what's happening with it. But yes, here you go. Look, so shiny. Oh, it's
Dark Honey says she ordered one. Yay! yeah, so I just want to make sure for those of you who didn't know, that is there. And Joey is super pumped, and I'm pumped for Joey. It's her first book ever. She's always wanted to be published. And it's a big deal. It's a big freaking deal. So even if for whatever reason you can't get it, like celebrate that with us, please, because I am pumped for her. So yeah. All right. And then of course, the Ancestry course I talked about is on chrisashburn.com. If you are interested in that, you can go to shop and it should bring up the Gumroad for that. But I'm going to get going. I got stuff to do, places to go, spirits
Husbands to lift.
Husbands to try and lift as he looks on unamused.
Probably.
Giving it my all. But thank you guys so much for being here. We appreciate you guys. You guys are always like really active in the chat. You're asking stuff. You bring incitement too, and the love, and we really appreciate it. I know I do. I haven't been doing lives for a long time, so it's really, really nice to be back. I know I said this on the last live. I gushed, but I'm gonna gush again on my channel. Because it means a lot. It means a lot.
This way.
It does. And I know that these tend to be like 2 hours long. But for those of you who are like chilling and get the whole like hangout vibe there, we appreciate it. And that's really what we're about, man. We're about like hanging out and kind of being at the coffee table and talking about things like this. Bringing it in a much more like casual conversational way.
And having fun with it. Having fun with it. And letting it expand as feels natural to us rather than feeling we have to stuff it in sections.
Yes.
I totally understand why other people do short versions. I totally get it. I totally know that YouTube is a arse when it comes to not wanting to do it that way. Mm-hmm. But we feel comfortable in this format, and we get to expand.
This is who we are. This is how we
play.
Are.
Yeah.
So this is what we do. And to those of you who love this, those of you who like listening, and I know some people have said they'll like put us on and do housework and stuff.
That's awesome.
You're freaking great. I love that we're like hanging out in your house with you as you do stuff, or like driving in the car with you. It's just really fun, and it does my soul good to know, because I know that there are a lot of people out there that feel like they don't have a community to do that with, that close to them. So the fact that we can all kind of sit down at a table and hang out this way and do things in our own life at the same time, I know it's not the same as being face to face, but it's just, I don't know. It warms my heart to know that we're able to be that community no matter where we are.
It honors the connections.
I'm getting a little verklempt just saying it. So
it honors the connections we know exist, but sometimes it feels difficult to feel them, I guess. And when we go live like this, it's a nice reminder, because we can interact, we can chat, we can have a giggle, we can be stupid as all crazy, which we always are.
We can be human, man.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I like doing it this way, and I'm glad that you guys do. And also I will add though that if it's ever too long, like YouTube saves where you stop. So you can stop and then continue on. I do that with a bunch of videos. Astrology videos that go like way into depth, that are like hours and hours long. I will totally watch them like on my days off in batches. Like I'll watch half of it and then I'll save, then I'll watch half. Because I don't necessarily have the time all the time to dedicate to it, but I can go back and watch it. So but yeah, so that's pretty handy too. But either way, we love your faces. I'm so glad that you guys like get it, and that you guys are here and on board, and that you like bring your own stuff to the table. I mean, we got to talk to a lot of different people about a lot of different things today. And a lot of different perspectives in terms of astrology, ancestry, and DNA. It's on my brain now. So yeah, hopefully you've gotten some stuff from this. We definitely have, from talking to you guys. But yeah, we love your faces.
I have a new little tagline I'm going to experiment with here at the end of Chris's thing. Live wildly, love freely, and may your eyes and lives be clad in stars. Stay fluxy, everybody.
And may the odds be ever in your favor. Goodbye. I got my own tagline. What do you mean it's not mine?
I mean, preach. I mean,
Wait. Fan us out, girl. Fan us out.
fan us out. There you go.
Y'all have a good day. Bless.